So I'd like to thank you for joining me today. I'm super excited to have you on my podcast. I'm seeing you on the 26th in Chicago.
Oh, awesome. That'll be
Yeah,
fun.
I'll be there at the Nederlander.
Heck
So
yeah.
starting off, can you please explain a little bit about yourself for those who don't know who you are?
Sure. My name is Ian Coursey. I'm currently playing Rolf on the national tour of The Sound of Music. I was recently on the Dear Evan Hansen national tour understudying Connor and Jared, and I was lucky enough to graduate from the University of Michigan with a major in musical theater. Um, I grew up doing theater. I grew up playing baseball, so I love sports. It was a very big part of my life. And I'm from Silver Spring, Maryland.
That's awesome. And speaking of
Yeah.
different things, I think you actually met Kana the night I saw it in Chicago.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, I don't remember
Oh
what
my
night,
gosh.
but I'm pretty sure you were my Kana.
Oh, that's awesome. Not a lot of people saw me as Connor, so that's
Yeah.
very exciting.
So you know straight to the stage, and you have been in a handful of shows. And so what got you into theater, and when did you realize that theater was your passion?
I usually say that my aunt got me into theater. She was an actress in college, and then she moved over to Scotland to go to the Fringe Festival, which is amazing. It's the biggest theater festival in the world. Um, and she stayed over there and became a movie director and producer and writer. And, when I was growing up, we had kind of a competitive relationship, and I got into acting because she loved it so much, and she kind of passed it on to me. And then I joined a youth Shakespearean theater group in Maryland when I was probably like 9 or 10. And they did like fun little twists on Shakespearean classics. Like we did Hamlet, but it was set in this dollhouse, this three-story dollhouse. And we all had these like paper mache masks.
That's awesome.
We did The Tempest in this like dystopian world where the world got flooded. Um, and then I started musical theater really my freshman year of high school. And I remember sitting in the audience watching the fall play, which was Noises Off, which is an awesome show. Um, and like 15 minutes in, I turned to my mom and I said, I have to do that. I got to get up there. And I remember sitting at lunch with my friends the next day, and they were like, well, the musical Titanic is auditioning this week. You should audition. And I never like sang before. I never had any lessons. I had no idea what I was doing. Um, but I auditioned and I got a role in the show, and it was just the best experience ever. I mean, it
And
was, I'm
and, it,
sure it
and
was.
Titanic is such an awesome show to start off with too. Like,
Oh my God. I think it's one of the best ensemble scores ever written for Broadway. And I played Barrett, the Stoker, which Brian Darcy James played. So I just, I was listening to him all day, and it was just the best. I fell in love with it.
yeah, for sure. And so, as a performer, who are some of your biggest inspirations?
Ooh. Well, Brian Darcy James is definitely one of them. In the musical theater world, Jeremy Jordan, we love him.
Yeah.
Um, who else, man? Brian Darcy James, Norbert Leo Butz, Aaron Tveit, all those guys. But in like the, more movie play world, I love DiCaprio. Um, who else? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on like all the names. Um, I don't know. I love just watching actors at their best and watching, actors through their careers and seeing how they build a career and what roles they choose to take and how they grow from a young age. I mean, DiCaprio is such an awesome person to watch because he started, if you watch What's Eating Gilbert Grape, he
Yeah.
was such a young kid. And I think that's, an Oscar-worthy performance right there. And now he's doing, a crazy movie right now that I'm about to see this week, where he's like, I don't know, like a broken down father trying to kill people. Who knows? But I've got a
Good
lot
stuff.
of,
Good stuff.
yeah.
And so you received your BFA in musical theater from UMich. And so how did studying there help you improve as a performer?
Oh man, so much. I think the best part about Michigan is they really encourage their students to try everything. It's not like you're here to be an actor, um, which, some conservatories tend to do. They want you to start writing and directing and, start becoming a choreographer or a director. Like there's all these different classes that are available to you. Um, and they really encourage you to do anything you want. Like if freshman and sophomore year is kind of structured the same, like you're with your class and you're doing those required classes, but then junior and senior year, you're really kind of on your own. You have some requirements to hit, but you can go into the professors and make a case for why you should be taking this specific class. You're like, I think this would really help me learn how to conduct, or I want to take jazz music theory class, and that's awesome. And I think the people really shaped me. I was just talking about it last night. I think it's pretty easy to kind of coast through college and do the classes and not really get a lot out of it if you don't put the effort in. So it's really what you it's really what you put into it is what you get out. Um, so I learned a lot in the classes, but I also learned a lot just being in the environment of college and, living my life and being on my own for the first time away from my parents and having to figure out my taxes and grocery shopping every week and, living on my own. Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, if I'm not mistaken, Sound of Music is your second national tour, correct?
that's correct.
So before we get more into that, I want to talk a little bit about your first national tour where you understudied Connor and Jared and Devin Hansen. And so, what was your first experience with Devin Hansen?
Ooh, what was my first? Well, Dear Evan Hansen did its out of town tryout in DC at Arena Stage, and that's like 20 minutes from my house. So I remember walking around my neighborhood and seeing these posters with Ben Platt on it and this guy in a cast, and I was like, "What is this show?" And I didn't end up seeing it. I wish I saw it. But then, the cast album came out, and I, of course, started listening to it all the time. And for how old was I? I think I was 16. I took a trip up to New York with my mom, and she got me a single ticket for the show, like a rush ticket, in the first row. And I saw Taylor Trench as Evan Hansen, and I met the whole cast after at the stage door, and I fell in love with it. And then, like, probably a year later, I went back up to New York to do an open call for the production with my best friend Danny. And it was crazy. We lined up at 4 a.m. and there were hundreds of people just waiting to get in. And the only person in the room was Tara Rubin, who is a very, very well-known and important casting director. And that was the first time I got to meet her. And I don't think anything happened from that. And then I sent in a tape for Connor a couple months later, and I got a call back from that, and then nothing happened. And then fast forward to the end of my sophomore year at Michigan, I got a self-tape request from the casting team, and I sent in my tape for Connor and Jared. And like 3 months later, I got an email saying that I was in for the final callbacks, and I flew to New York, and I did it. And then a couple days later, I got the offer.
That's so special. And so when you first saw the show in, I think you said 2016, did you ever like think that you would be like making a debut in it at all, or was it just like,
I don't know. I don't really. I guess I always wanted to be Evan, as everyone does. And Connor. I never really saw myself as Jared, which is funny because I went on for Jared. I mean, maybe 50 times, 50 plus times. Um, but I remember seeing the show and wishing I could be up there because it looked like so much fun. I mean, I remember watching Sincerely Me and just
yeah,
seeing them have the best time ever. And every time I got to do that song was the best. We always had so much fun and I never got sick of it. Um, yeah, I love doing it so much. I miss it a lot.
yeah, for sure. And so what are some things that surprised you from your first national tour?
Oh, a lot of things. Um, it was tough. There were a lot of incredible parts about it, but it was definitely tough, mentally and physically. I was 19 when I started the tour. And taking a year off of college, I was doing classes on the road, which was an experience. But I was living on my own, really financially independent for the first time. I had my parents help freshman and sophomore year of college, but now I was making my own money, had my own paycheck. I had to budget. I had to take care of myself. We were For the most part, moving to a different city every week, which takes a toll on you mentally and physically. It can be tough to stay in shape and stay in a good mental headspace. Um, but I had a lot of good people around me, which really helped. I had Pierce, who and um, we were really like two buddies that whole time. So it's really what you make of it. I mean, it was also tough not being able to perform every night, like I'm doing now. I get to do the show every night on Sound of Music, but on Dear Evan Hansen, it was pretty tough because I wanted to be doing it every night so badly. And every time I got to go on, it felt like I was opening a present on Christmas. I was like, yes, I finally get to do it. Because at times there would be like a month or two that would go by that I didn't go on. And for Connor, I mean, we started the tour in June, and the last time I went on for Connor was September. And so I went from September to the following July, not going out for Connor at all, which was tough because I love doing that role. So it was, kind of a mental game to figure out, you know, what to do sometimes. It was
Yeah,
tough.
for sure. And so jumping into present day now, you're currently playing Rolf in The Sound of Music, like you mentioned. And so what was your first experience with Sound of Music? Was it the classic movie or seeing it on stage?
I think it was the movie. Yeah, it was definitely the movie. I'd never seen it on stage. And if you don't know, the stage version is pretty different than the film
Yeah.
version. And it's interesting because in this case, the staged production came before the movie. And that was 65 years ago. And then 5 years later, they made the movie to be this big, family musical blockbuster hit. But I remember watching the movie and loving it. Actually, I did have an experience with the stage version a little bit. I did a concert version of The Sound of Music with one of my theater groups in high school. And I remember auditioning for Rolf and singing 16 going on 17, and I didn't get it. And I was in the ensemble. Um, but that was like, we did it with this incredible 60-piece orchestra in this beautiful concert hall. And just being able to hear that music live was amazing. And so there's moments in the show that I remember hearing when I did it. I don't know, I was probably 14. And now I hear that score every single day. And there's, certain moments that I hear that make me pretty emotional because it's been, kind of a long journey with this role in particular and with this show. And I'm just so grateful to be doing it every night.
And I mean, Rolf is truly like a princess track. Like, come
Yes,
and sing a great
yes, he is.
song, leave a few, and then come back later. It's such a great role. And so, with Rolf being such a well-known character, how do you make this character your own while still honoring others who have played Rolf in the past?
Sure. I felt a lot of permission from the director. Our director is named Jack O'Brien, and he's a legendary director. I mean, he did Hairspray, Catch Me If You Can. He's been working. He went to Michigan as well, but he's one of the, theater titans. And he was so gracious and kind with me through all the auditions and the whole rehearsal process. He really trusted me to bring myself to Rolf. And he kind of had a different view of Rolf than most people do. Sometimes he can be seen as the like know-it-all kind of, young, innocent guy. But Jack really wanted him to be like the bad boy that parents hate their children going off with. And he hasn't had a lot in his life. Jack talked about maybe his father passed away and his mother wasn't really in the picture, and he's a telegram boy for Nürnberg, which is the town that we're in, and he spent his whole life serving others and being talked down to and looked down on upon. And so when he's given the opportunity to join a cause, which is the Nazi Party, unfortunately, he takes it because, all the people in his life are telling him that that's the right thing to do. And he doesn't know where it's headed. No one really knew where it was headed. Um, and so there's a lot of it's a pretty interesting character arc that I get to go on every night. And you're right, it's a big princess track. A lot of stuff happens off stage for Rolf. you don't see him get inducted into the Nazi party and go through his training. That's all happening during the show when the kids are singing. And so
It,
I
it's crazy because, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, you go for
It's
it.
crazy because I saw the show I think in 22 at a like community theater in Paramount Theater, uh,
Yeah.
and they did Sound of Music, and I was maybe 13 or 14, and I was seeing my friend who was playing Kurt in the show,
Hmm.
and little me didn't know what was going on. And Rolf comes on one moment, he's all like singing, and so he comes on the next scene, he's part of the Nazi. I'm like, wait, what just happened? Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
so like quick that it kind of catches you off guard.
I know sometimes it's a little shocking too, because I mean you see him sing 16 going on 17, and that's awesome, and he's so charming and lovable, and then he's a Nazi, and you're like, whoa. But that's also what happened.
Yeah.
We had a really cool day where we were talking about the turn in the show when like the Nazis come in to the picture, and Jack was like, okay, everything that you have known up until this point doesn't matter anymore. All the characters that had the power don't have the power, and all the characters that didn't are now in charge. You know, the telegram boy, the butler, um, all the people in the neighborhood, they are now a part of the Nazi party. And it's just this family that has to stick to their core values and fight against that and flee. And it's a very quick turn. And he said, the Nazis aren't coming; they're here, and they're in the house right now. And that was pretty intense. And I think it's really intense in the show, and it's been quite effective.
Yeah, for sure. And so can you take us through the audition process for The Sound of Music?
Yeah. I got a. I think they just called me in first in person. I never did a tape for it. And it was being cast by Rachel Hoffman and Rashad Naylor, who are a part of the Telsey office. And I had known Rachel. I met her when I was 17 because I did the Michigan summer intensive called Impulse, and she was a huge part of it back then. Now she runs the whole thing. She's like in charge because um, the previous chair, Brent Wagner, uh, left a year or two ago. So she had known me for a while, and they called me in for Rolf. And I remember when I was walking to the audition, I got a text from Rachel being like, "Hey, Ian, just so you know, Jack sees Rolf a little differently. He wants, blah, 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 the bad boy." And I was like, okay, cool. That's really helpful. Like, it's pretty cool that the casting director is just
Giving
texting
you,
me that.
yeah,
And I went in and it was, I believe it was Jack O'Brien, Rachel, Rashad was there, the other casting director, and our associate director. That may have been it. And a reader. And I had to do the scene before 16 going on 17, 16 going on 17, and then one other scene, one of the scenes in Act Two, where like he's
yeah,
evil. Um, and I did it, and it was really fun. And I, remember Jack kind of bringing me up and sitting me down, and we talked about the material a little bit and the character and what he was imagining for that. And I left, and I remember I got a text from Rachel saying, "That was perfect." And I was like, "Oh, awesome. That's so cool." And then they brought me in again, maybe like a week or two later. I did the same material, same thing. I got really good feedback, and then I left. And then we got an email from casting. My agents got an email saying, "Hey, we're taking a little break from seeing people. Ian is still heavily in the mix. Let us know if he gets any offers, but we're going to have another round in like February, which was a month or two away." And I was like, okay, cool. So I kind of put it in the back of my mind. And then they called me in again in February, and I went in for the whole team. Everyone was there, and I did the same material that I've been doing. And it was fun. I finished, and Jack said to me, he said, "We worked on this last time, didn't we?" And I said, "Yeah, we did." And he said, "And you went away and you thought about it, didn't you?" And I said, "Yes, I did." And he said, "Good work." And then the next day, they called me in for a final dance call. Um, and at the time, it was me and my buddy Dylan, who was covering Rolf. on the show right now. He's in the ensemble and covering Rolf. It was just the two of us and these two girls who were in for Liesel, and we each had an hour. Uh, Me and one of the Liesels and Dylan and the other Liesel. And we had an hour with the choreographer, Danny Mefford, who also choreographed Dear Evan Hansen, and Kimberly Kimbo, and his associate choreographer, Mark Myers, who taught me Dear Evan Hansen
Oh my God.
and like came out on the road the whole year. So I knew him really well. And I had no idea that he would be in the room, but I walked in and there he was. And I was like, oh, thank God, like a familiar face, people who know me, know how I work. Um, and it was really fun. It was just kind of like a work session where we did the whole scene and the whole dance. It's a little different than what we ended up doing in the show, but Jack O'Brien was sitting in the corner watching us work, and Rachel Hoffman was there taking notes on us. But it really just felt like a rehearsal. It wasn't like I was auditioning for anything. It felt like we already had the part and we were blocking this whole sequence. Um, and then they let us go after. And a couple days later, I got the call that I got it.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
so, moving on, and that's such a full circle journey with all of Devin Hansen folks in the
Yeah. Yeah.
room. But what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, I would say it's going to be tough. It's a tough business and a tough career. There are lots of no's. I spent the past year in New York getting really close to roles that would change my life and would, launch me into the stardom that I see my friends getting. And it's tough when you hear no on something that you're so passionate about. But that's the industry that we're in, and you never know what's going on behind the table, right? There's so many things. People have family that's auditioning, loved ones, you never know. So the only thing that we can do is do our work, be prepared, keep our head down, do what we're in the room to do, bring our best every day. And if you get a no, it's on to the next one. It's always on to the next one. And it just takes one person to say yes. And they said yes to me, and that changed, the next year of my life, getting to do this amazing show, getting paid to do what I love every night, being out in front of a crowd every night. Um, that's really what I love to do, and that's all we can do. So,
Yeah, for sure. That's amazing. And so, for this next question, it's kind of similar to the last, but what advice would you give to younger performers who want to pursue acting professionally?
there was a quote said by Brent Wagner, who founded the Michigan Musical Theater program. And I was lucky enough to have him for 3 of my 4 years. No, all 4 years at Michigan. Um, but his quote that he said is, "You can't move forward while looking to the side." And that means you can't progress as an individual, as an artist, if you're constantly looking around at everyone around you, being like, "Oh, what job did they just get? Oh, they can sing higher than me. Oh, they can kick their legs higher than me. Oh, blah, 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 blah." Who cares? It doesn't matter. Everyone's on their own journey. Everyone's figuring it out. Everyone is self-conscious and, worrying about themselves. So you can't worry about other people. All you can do is focus on yourself and what you bring to the room every day and trust that your journey will work out as it's supposed to. I've been a very big believer in everything happens for a reason, and I think that's true. And so we just have to limit. There's so many different variables in this industry. You have to limit the amount of stress you bring yourself because it's all a mental game. It's all what you tell yourself. And if you tell yourself that, you're never going to make it, that everyone else is doing a great job, that's what you're going to become and you're going to run yourself into the ground. But if, you're positive with yourself, if you're forgiving, you give yourself grace, it'll all pay off and, it'll all work out.
Yeah, for sure. That's amazing. So that actually wraps up the interview today. I'd like to thank you for joining me.
Awesome. Thanks, Timothy.